What's that one small business local to you that you believe to be a front for something illegal? There is a VCR repair shop near me. Just VCR repair. There are not enough VCR players in the city to keep that place open. I have a funny story about something like this. I'm a dentist and I buy lunch for our staff quite frequently. One time we bought food from a local Mexican joint. I got a burrito that ended up being mostly meat and it was really good meat. I asked how much it was and it was quite cheap. I immediately assumed it was a money laundering front. Anyways, I was right. https www.wyomingnews.com/news/Cheyenne-restaurants-implicated-in-Mexican-cartel-drug-money-L Ondering/article_56813 FC-3B26-11E9-968B-D39CD324E354.html. I used to always go to this little tire shop near my house. Across the parking lot way in the back was another building where they were always working on cars. I needed some brake pads changed. So I drove back there and asked if they would change them. 3 guys rushed out there all nervous and weird acting and asked what I wanted. I told them. Then they pulled my car in, changed the pads super quick, said, "No charge, goodbye," and that was that. It was a really weird, eerie experience. Fast forward a couple of weeks and I heard that place got raided by the cops and turned out to be one of the biggest meth dealers in the county. I don't even have to think it. It's been proven. I live in Myrtle Beach. So we have had a ton of discount beachwear stores. You know the ones where you buy 5 shirts for $10 and they give you a free hermit crab. The P&L models are absolutely mind-blowing since rent is crazy expensive and they obviously aren't turning a huge profit. Turned out that the store's main transactions were illegal wire transfers going overseas. All the old buildings either were bought out by legit businesses or are being left to urban decay. There's a used car lot across the street from my work that never sells any cars. I've been working at my job for 5.5 years and 1, maybe 2, have left the lot in that entire time. Cell phone case stores. Rent in my city is ridiculously expensive. How are you operating a cell phone case and refurbished phone store? The amount of cell phones needed to keep your store open and making a profit has to be in the thousands. Small town in mountains of North Carolina. Somehow we had a deli that seemed to be right out of NYC. All the good brands from back home. Almost nobody ate there. I only saw another customer a couple of times. Great cold cuts. Excellent subs. If you know anything about rural NC, about the only DNA is from the British Isles here. The guys running the place were as Italian as you could get. And there were always at least 3 of them hanging around the deli. Not doing anything, just sitting in chairs back in the kitchen. One would reluctantly get up to fix a sandwich when I ordered one. They were there for years. I'd love to see what the P&L they showed to the IRS looked like, because I'm certain it showed a thriving business. There was a Chinese restaurant in the area I used to live. It was in a strip mall kind of setup, but the inside looked like you stepped into a Chinese storybook. It was beautiful inside, had carved wooden dividers between the booths, and a koi pond in the entrance. It was amazing. The food was incredible but reasonably priced. But there was never more than 1 or 2 tables occupied any time we went there. The hostess looked like a porcelain doll, and had the best posture I've ever seen. She was very nice, but I always got the feeling I wasn't exactly welcome. Not in a rude way but in a, "you don't really know what this place is, do you?" way. Sometimes a group of Chinese men would come in and be escorted to the back of the restaurant where there was a huge round table, and the doors would be closed. I feel it was either some sort of organized crime front, or a brothel. If you woke up with $1 million in the bank tomorrow, what would be your first purchase? Pay off all my debts. Go buy groceries and not worry about how much it's going to cost. A house. I wouldn't even purchase anything. I'd be paying off debts first. A lawyer. That shit ain't mine and I ain't going down for it. Absolutely fucking nothing. Because I don't want to be on the hook for all that cash when the bank undoes the error. Index funds. Boo. Bacon and eggs on a roll with a large black coffee. You're the last men, women on earth. Everyone else has the opposite sex. What do? Dress as the opposite sex and make sure no one knows I'm the last one. Greater than they created the 5500ths rule, which suggested that a minimum population size of 50 was necessary to combat inbreeding and a minimum of 500 individuals was needed to reduce genetic drift. Management agencies tended to use the 5500ths rule under the assumption that it was applicable to species generally. https www.britannica.com/science/50-500-rule tilde. Text equals biologist %20 Michael %20 Sol %C 3% A9. They %20 created %20 the %20% E2% 80% 9C 50% 2F 500% E2% 80% 90% 20 rule %2C %20 which %20 suggested was %20 applicable %20 to %20 species %20 generally greater than for humans. This is the 101,000th rule. To prevent short-term issues with deleterious alleles from inbreeding, it is recommended there be 100 individuals. To maintain genetic diversity and prevent long-term negative effects that would decrease reproductive fitness from genetic drift, 1,000 individuals are recommended. https www.reddit.com/r/evolution/comments/1C57GDJ/how_many_breeding_take_to/at first. Regardless of gender, you'd likely have your freedoms removed. As the only man, you'll have a much easier time combating genetic drift, and could potentially experience freedom after the first year. However, as the only woman, you are extremely limited in being able to repopulate and you would likely have forced pregnancies until you are no longer able, greatly limiting your freedom. Both scenarios are bad, but being a woman in this case is a nightmare. I'm assuming a male Redditor would still not get any. Only woman in the world? Fucking hide. I can't think of a horror worse than being the sole surviving female on a planet of men. Truly, I would find a peaceful place and remove myself from the equation. Only woman in a world full of men? Off myself. Killing myself immediately, and preferably in a way that wouldn't leave my body behind either. Kill myself immediately. What is the most horrifying piece of information you have to share? For a lot of people, the first sign of cardiovascular disease is sudden death. Carbon dioxide was blamed for the deaths of around 1,700 people in Cameroon, West Africa, in 1986 when a massive release of gas occurred from Lake Nyos, a volcanic crater lake. The clinical findings in 845 survivors seen at or admitted to hospital were compatible with exposure to an asphyxiant gas. They were just sleeping when the lake released a giant cloud of CO2 and wiped out almost an entire village. Sometimes when an elderly person falls and ends up with a broken hip, it's actually the hip breaking that causes the fall. During the Space Shuttle Challenger disaster, the flight data shows that the astronauts turned on their internal oxygen supplies after the explosion. so it's likely that some of them were still alive when they hit the water. The American blood supply runs on about a 2 to 3 day buffer for most products. If for some reason the entire system shut down for a couple of weeks, people would die for lack of transfusions. And while at least 60% of our citizens are eligible to donate blood, only 5% of those people ever will. If that number went to around 8%, no blood bank would ever need to call you again. When Judith Barcy, the voice of Ducky in The Land Before Time, was murdered by her father, she was halfway through doing voice work for All Dogs Go Heaven. Her last recorded voice lines as her goodbye to Charlie, played by Burt Reynolds. Reynolds recorded his lines after her death. It took him 63 takes to get through it, and you can tell he's barely keeping it together when doing the scene. https youtube.be/heyabumph_y feature shared for fun. I asked my father-in-law, retired chief deputy coroner, how someone could get away with murder. Like 100% get away with a heavily investigated murder and make it nearly impossible to solve. He rattled off about 3 to 4 methods quickly. Not that hard, come to find out. Edit. Geesh. Bunch of Dexters on Reddit. Yeah, I posted an example but already deleted. L'Angolo di Gigi, the iconic Italian restaurant run by chef Gigi Ferruzzo, left an indelible mark on the culinary scene in the capital of Colombia in the 80s. Not only for its exquisite flavors but also for the dark rumors that surrounded it. It was said that the gourmet dishes served there, located on the road to La Calera, were prepared with human flesh. Little is known about Ferruzzo because it's known that he was a butcher from a young age and emigrated from Italy to settle in Colombia. Over time, he began associating with influential politicians in the country, and his behavior changed so much that many compared him to a mobster. Rumors spread that these politicians were not only his friends but also the ones supplying the bodies he allegedly used in his cooking, because a supposed former member of the secret police claimed that the bodies from the wars against guerrillas and drug trafficking were sold to Ferruzzo, and that, on the day of the Palace of Justice siege, he was allowed to select the plumpest corpses. To this day, the whereabouts of these people are unknown, and that is why one of the theories is that he cooked them and fed them to his diners. The situation worsened when restaurant employees began to suspect something was wrong, as Ferruzzo wouldn't allow anyone else to handle the meat because he claimed it was imported from Italy, sent by his sister, although she later denied this. Eventually, after these rumors circulated, L'Angolo di Gigi closed its doors, and Ferruzzo disappeared over 40 years ago, leaving his fate shrouded in mystery. No one knows what happened to him.